Very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I've enjoyed your content online.
Thank you.
I got first introduced to you by a video you did with his channel's Megalithic Marvels.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was about ancient Chinese artifacts that don't make any sense.
Yes.
And it was so fascinating. The moment I saw it, I reached out to my guy. I was like, I got to talk to her because this is crazy. So please explain to people what these artifacts are and what's so bizarre about them.
I first saw these artifacts in the British Museum. So they have an entire whole wall full of them, and they're made of nephrite jade, which is an extremely hard stone. And they just look machined. They look way too precise for the tools that they say built them. So I started doing some research. I haven't been to the site in China. It was built by the Liangzhu culture, or so archaeologists say. But it's two different kinds of artifacts that are really famous. One is called a Cong tube, which is a tall tube that's circular in the middle and square on the outside, and extremely precise geometry. The other one are these big round bee discs that almost look like a giant flat donut that are perfectly flat on top. You know, there's the precision versions of these, just like you see all over the world, and there are versions that are much cruder. So it almost seems like this civilization had this. My theory is that these were not unlike the hardstone vases in Egypt. So it was something that this culture either was gifted or found, and it turned into a very cherished object, like a grave good for them. So you find these tombs in Liangzhu, China, that have literally thousands of these jade artifacts in them. And it's not unlike the hard stone vases that you see in Egypt, where you find those in the graves as well.
So what's the timeline where these pieces are attributed to?
So these are really old. I mean, the earthworks and the community around the Liangzhu culture is securely dated by archaeologists to like 3400 BC. And then, just so it's about the same actually as the graves that were in Egypt with the hardstone bases. So it's very, very old. And
at the time of this culture, what were their tools? Like, do we know?
Well, the archaeologists say that it was made with strings. So they would take strings with sand or some sort of an abrasive, and they would cut the jade that way. And then they would use copper tools, stone hammers, those kinds of things to shape it. So the explanation...
You say that with a giant smile on your face.
The explanation doesn't make a lot of sense. And even, the hole down the middle of the bee disc is a perfect... I mean, you can see the drill marks on the inside of the bee disc.
Do we have some images of these things?
Yes.
Let's take a look at them.
Jamie, I have a China folder.
Because the images on... and by the way, that channel, Megalithic Marvels, Derek's channel, excellent. Really fun.
So great.
Great stuff.
Yeah. Derek is the one that got me into all this.
Shout out to Derek.
Shout out to Derek.
So this is, how do you say it? How do you pronounce that?
B-disc.
B-disc, B-I-disc.
Yep.
And how big is this?
So that thing's about 9 inches across. Perfectly circular, perfectly flat surface on the top.
Like measured to what tolerance?
I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know that there have been a lot of deep scientific studies on the precision of these. Right, the archaeologists assume that this culture made them with bamboo and strings.
Okay.
So that picture, Jamie, you can see the inside of the actual artifact in the bottom right. That's drilled.
Yeah.
Right, and the one on the left is an experiment these archaeologists ran with a bamboo core down the middle of the jade, and you can see the difference between the two.
How far did they get down with the bamboo experiment?
Oh, all the way through.
They got all the way through. How long did that take?
I don't know the answer to that. There was an archaeologist that did an experiment in the 1930s, and they used these strings with the abrasives to cut off a piece of jade that was the size of a basketball, and it took them a week to cut the string all the way through that piece of jade. So it was a long
So
process.
the difference in the people that are listening, so there's the bamboo experiment where they drilled into something with a bamboo and cord and some, what else did they use? Like sand or something?
Yes, abrasives of some sort. Yeah.
And so the difference is, if you look at the lines as it's drilling down, they're thick and they don't look the same. If you look at the ones in the actual artifact, they're extremely tight. They're way smaller, and they're tighter to each other, and it doesn't make sense. Like, you look at that, you're like, that looks like a machine.
It does. And in this specific instance, it looks to me like the drill came from both directions. Like, they flipped it over and drilled from the top, and then flipped it over again and drilled from the bottom, and that's where it met in the middle.
Wow. So what's out of all these different artifacts, what's the most puzzling one to you?
The sung tube,
Which is the one on the left-hand side
correct.
there.
Yep. So it's larger on top, smaller on the bottom, perfectly 90-degree corners. It's got a round tube in the middle, but the artifact in general is square. So it's just a very complex shape to create with that level of precision. And nephrite jade is a very hard stone. So it would have taken, people in my space talk about the Mohs scale of hardness, just as a way of saying diamonds are a 10, different stone levels. The hard stone discs, like diorite, that would be a 6 or 7. This is the same. It's that hard.
Wow. And so is the idea, I'm just assuming the idea, is that there was a more sophisticated culture that probably existed predating that, and these are leftover artifacts?
It is only my opinion that that's the case. I haven't seen a lot of people talk about these artifacts at all. Jamie, if you go back to the picture you had just flashed on the screen, the reason I've developed this theory, so this is an image on the side of the largest sung tube. It's called the King of Jade Sung. It's a 15-pound artifact that was found. And you can see the raised stone, so it's the high relief carvings that were later etched over. That etching has become very famous. If you look at photos of the museum in Liangzhu, this image is everywhere. And I think that this was an image that was used by the Liangzhu tribe as like the image of the king, basically. And so I do believe that it was scratched over the top of an original, very interesting high relief carving that you see in a lot of other artifacts. So I think that he basically found this. It looks, it's something that they maybe could not recreate, and then they kind of stamped their kingly symbol over the top of it.
So this is it's common in Egypt as well, and particularly this theory among alternative historians, because you look at the complexity of some of the sarcophaguses and some of the different things and then you see the writing on the outside, which looks like cruder. The writing is not as precise. The cutting is not as precise. There's a lot of like chips to it. It doesn't look like they use the same materials or the same utensils or tools.
Yeah, and the question is, if you had the ability, there's the King of Jade Sung. So if you had the ability to make an artifact in that kind of a shape, why would you not have also created the scratching over the top in that high quality version? So why would you create the artifact like that and then just scratch over the top of it? Right? It doesn't make sense.
That's always been the case that history shows that people who are controlling a region will take credit for everything. They'll take credit for all the ancient stuff too. They'll put their name on it. They own everything.
Yeah.
And that's famous with pharaohs. They did it with everything. And this is documented. We know that they wrote their name on things that they didn't create.
Yeah. Ramses II was King Selfie. He put his cartouche on everything.
Yeah, which is, it sounds like what a dictator does. It sounds like what a pharaoh would do.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that they made it. And for us to just assume that they did, knowing that people in great power behave that way, is kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. That's our map of history. So how did you get down this road where you started looking at these objects and looking at the the conventional historical timeline and saying something's wrong here?
Specific to the Chinese artifacts?
Yeah. Or were you already on that path when you found the Chinese artifacts?
I've been on this path for a while. And, the name of my channel is Secrets in Stone. And the reason I named it that is because I believe that the stones speak to you. They will show you exactly what the story is, right? So with these artifacts, just like the hardstone vases, it just is out of place. It doesn't make any sense. And especially in the British Museum, when you look at these with your own eyes, and then you read the story of how they believe that they were made, it just doesn't add up. And so all you have to do, in any of these places is dig 1 or 2 levels down and you start to see a lot of inconsistencies.
1 or 2 levels, so meaning that the older stuff is the more complex.
Yeah, or with the way that the archaeologists have interpreted a lot of these sites, there's a whole lot of assumptions that are made. There's carbon dating that only goes partway down. They'll dig partway down, they'll date it, it matches their story, and they write the report. They'll take inscriptions, especially in Cambodia, places like that, where a king has written an inscription, and they'll say, yep, well, that king wrote on this, so this must have been made at this time. And there's really no further investigation. So it's become a theme with my work, where I'll go somewhere, specifically with the megalithic architecture. You can see exactly where the old architecture was built. Oftentimes it's the lowest level. And then you can see where other cultures have come later and built on top of it. And it looks like just a copy of what's underneath. It's like they were really trying to make what they saw, but they just couldn't. And so once you've kind of trained your eye for that, you go anywhere in the world and you see it.
How did you start looking at this stuff?
I went to Egypt 4 years ago and watched Ben Van Kerkwick's videos. You know Ben.
Sure. He's awesome.
So I watched a couple of his videos on the way to Egypt. That was my first kind of introduction to this. And then it just became a bit of a obsession for me. I like to go to the sites around the world that other people don't really go to. So, I think Egypt and Peru and Turkey, it's all in good hands, right? Ben's watching over Egypt. We've got Brian Forrester down in Peru doing amazing work. The sites I go to are the sites that nobody else really visits. So I just got back from India a couple weeks ago. I spent a lot of time in Cambodia. I went to Thailand. And these are the sites that I think if you're trying to make a case, or at least a strong enough case that people will consider, right, that there may be a different history than what we're being told, I think you have to have more than 3 examples. So if you can start to do a lot of research on these sites all around the world, you can have thousands of examples of nubs, for example, or megalithic architecture that looks very similar. These walls that look very similar all over the world. And it just in my mind, it makes a much stronger case for it than just continuing to look at the same sites over and over again.
It seems to me so much more likely that the timeline is incorrect than the historians are right and everyone else is just a conspiracy theorist weirdo. The more you look at it, the more questions I have. Like that Kailasa temple in India. Yeah, we've gone over that a few times, but Jamie pointed out something that they brought in was it like an army to try to destroy it? And they barely put a dent in the damn thing. Yeah. And they stayed for a long time. They tried to smash it up and they couldn't do shit to it. Yeah. And then you go, okay, well, how did they make this? What did they, and I saw a really wild YouTube video the other day where this guy was proposing that they used lasers and that it was all laser carved and that they had some sort of like super sophisticated laser setup back then. That's why you're not finding all the stone.
Well,
I was like, what? Wait a minute.
Look, I think that's absolutely possible.
It sounds possible, but also so insane that we're so wrong about the linear timeline of human history that they had fucking lasers in India, like how many thousands of years ago that they were using to carve an entire massive, perfect temple out of rock?
I was just down at the Hoysala temples, which are in southern India, and they have these lathe-turned pillars. The pillars are feet across. They're huge. And you walk up to them and you look at them closely and you can see the lathe marks on them. And archaeologists concede that they're lathe-turned, but they don't concede that it's machined. So they basically say, well, maybe they were turned on a lathe. We'll give you that. But that was probably human-powered or animal-powered. Yeah, so
God.
These are the lathe-turned pillars in southern India. I was just looking at these with my own eyes a couple weeks ago. It's completely unexplainable. And to think of the size of the machine that would be required, say you turn that pillar sideways, you connect it to a machine on each side, and you start lathing. Jamie, I have a folder in my India pictures that...
God, that's so pretty.
That has lots of evidence. So what you can see at sites like Hampi in India is you can see the evidence of lathing. So it almost looks like the setup that they would have used to carve these kinds of pillars. And it's just sitting in kind of far-flung corners of these sites. Nobody addresses what they are. And so the evidence is everywhere of this. It's just not, it's written off. It's like, well, that must have been an animal-powered lathe. So I do think we have strong evidence for machining in ancient history. And in my mind, it doesn't have to be machines. There could have been other ways that they were doing this that we don't even recognize.
So what is this that we're looking at?
So this is at the museum in Hampi in southern India. And that, to me, looks like so it looks like where a pillar might have been placed and the machine was spinning, some sort of a lathing machine. So I think it's like the other side of these pillars, basically.
Like the end plates.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, okay. And so these pillars, how large are they? Jamie, can you go to that image in the lower right-hand corner, please? That one right there. God, I can't get over how pretty that is.
They're so incredible in real life, too.
How tall are they?
Way tall. I mean, my head would probably go halfway up that pillar. They're twice as tall as me.
So immensely heavy. And what kind of stone is it carved out of?
This is a chloritic schist, so it's called soapstone.
God, it's so pretty.
But there are lathe-turned pillars that are also granite. In southern India, it's a soapstone, so when it's quarried, it's a little bit softer, and then it hardens once it's out of the quarry.
Has anyone done an analysis of the geometry in these things, like how precise it is, and how, like I'm looking at it. If you go to the one next to it, please, that one, that one. When I'm looking at the precision of that and how many different pieces there are, I would love to know how uniform those are, because it looks insane. That looks so beautiful. We're looking at, how do you say that word? Kopeshwar Mahadev. Is that how you say it? Mm-hmm. Mahadev? God, that's pretty.
It's incredible. And, these sites have crazy energy, too. You walk into them, and you can tell that they were made with a lot of love. These pillars, you can't help but touch them.
You're allowed to touch them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at that. Like, I would love to know what the precision of that is.
Yeah.
Because really, imagine if it's insanely precise, and then you have to explain that too. Not just stone chisels and tools and stuff, but...
When you can see in the pillars, you can see where the lathe started at the bottom, and you can see where it stopped at the top. It's just running. And, a lot of people are like, well, turn it sideways. Is that some sort of a sound wave, right? Is it telling us something?